Some betrayals aren't loud, they're calculated. Some invasions of trust are invisible, unfolding in the spaces you thought were safe. This is the story of realizing that the person you loved wasn't just cheating. They were turning your life into a controlled experiment. And how, when everything you knew was manipulated, you learned to take back your reality and your freedom. Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. The thermostat was set to 72, but the room felt cold. Not the kind of cold you fix with a blanket. The kind that makes your skin itch like it's trying to crawl away from your bones. She was in the hallway, adjusting her earrings in the mirror. Not the small ones she wears to work. The long ones. The ones she said made her neck look dangerously expensive. Her perfume hit first. The one she keeps in the box she said was too fancy for regular use. Then the heels, clicking like a metronome, counting down to something I didn't want to hear. I'm going on a date, she said, like she was announcing the weather. Try not to be jealous. And just like that, my marriage collapsed with the same calm energy as someone reading a recipe. She didn't wait for a fight. She didn't flinch. She didn't explain. She just grabbed her coat and her little green clutch bag and walked out the door with the kind of confidence people usually reserve for job interviews and court appearances. And me? I sat on the couch, still holding the TV remote. The screen was paused on an old documentary about abandoned malls. And I remember thinking, that's what this house feels like now. A place people used to go when they loved being here. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the remote at the wall like in the movies. I just sat there while my left leg bounced uncontrollably, like my body was trying to run away without me. It's funny, because I used to think if this ever happened, I'd lose my mind. That I'd beg or fight or chase her into the driveway yelling things the neighbors would pretend not to hear. But instead, I did the quietest, pettiest thing I've ever done in my life. I changed the locks. Not out of spite. Not even out of anger. Just finality. Something about that soft click of a new key turning felt cleaner than anything she ever said in our last 6 months together. I wish I could say this was a surprise. That she was acting weird, or distant, or sneaky. But the truth? She was acting fine. Almost too fine. Like she was in the final stages of a job she already knew she was quitting. Smiling just enough. Kissing just enough. Saying, I love you, just enough for me to question myself instead of her. But there were signs. And one sign, in particular, that I found exactly 6 days ago. The voice message. The one that wasn't meant for me. And if you're thinking maybe she butt-dialed someone, or maybe it was innocent, or maybe it's not what it sounds like, let me stop you. It was exactly what it sounded like. A hotel room. Laughter. His name. And then her voice. Not the version she used with me. The soft, sarcastic, tired wife tone. This was her fun voice. The one I hadn't heard in a year. And I played it 4 times. But that's not the worst part. The worst part was what I did next. Because it wasn't brave. Or healthy. Or even legal in some states. And trust me, I'm not proud of it. But if she was going to play games, I was done being the referee. I didn't plan to follow her. Honestly, I just stood at the window after she left, like some ghost in my own house, and watched her walk to that stupid gray hatchback she bought for errands. She never took that car anywhere fancy, until tonight. She backed out slow, confident, like she knew exactly where she was going. I waited until the red of her taillights vanished down the street, then I grabbed my coat. I didn't even think about it. I just moved. It was instinct. Stupid, twitchy instinct. I didn't have a tracker or some spy gear. No burner phone. I just drove. I figured she'd take Main Street. Everyone does, but she didn't. She cut through those back neighborhoods, the ones with the houses that all look like someone pressed copy-paste. I barely kept up. 10 minutes later, she pulled into a small, badly lit parking lot behind a building I hadn't seen in years. Murphy's Piano Bar. Closed 5 years ago, but the building had been converted. Now some swanky little speakeasy with a fake closed sign and valet guys in flat caps. She got out, adjusted her coat. Then a man appeared from the passenger side. I didn't recognize him at first. Tall, buzz-cut, confident, maybe 5 years younger than us. He opened the door for her like they were rehearsing it. His hand rested on her lower back like it belonged there. And here's the part that still gets me. She laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a fake one. A real, throw your head back, eyes closed laugh. She never laughed like that with me anymore. I didn't follow them inside. I couldn't. I just sat in my car, hands frozen on the wheel. For 43 minutes. I counted. And then my phone buzzed. A message. From her. Hey, forgot to tell you. I might be home late. Don't wait up, smiley face. She didn't know I was right there. 20 feet away. Watching the message come in as she sipped whatever drink he put in front of her. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a motel. Not to sleep. Just to think. That's when I made a decision I probably shouldn't have. A decision I still don't know how to explain. I logged into the old laptop she used to borrow. The one we used for streaming before she got her MacBook. She never logged out of her email. And what I found, it wasn't just him. There were folders, each with a different name, each with photos, dates, receipts, and sometimes even letters. One folder was labeled, "Don't open this one." And of course I did. I didn't even hesitate. The folder named "Don't open this one" might as well have been glowing red. It felt like a dare, but a quiet one, like someone whispering, "Are you sure?" in a room you thought was empty. I clicked. Inside were exactly 7 videos. No labels, just timestamps. The first one was from almost 2 years ago, long before the cold mornings, long before she started working late, long before I knew anything was wrong. Back when she was still saying, "I love you," like she meant it. I watched the first 5 seconds, and then I slammed the laptop shut. My own face. I saw myself. In the background. In our kitchen. Eating cereal. She was filming it secretly. She was behind the camera. Her voice whispered something I couldn't make out. And then, suddenly, she laughed. Soft. Strange. Like I was a sitcom, and she was the only one in the audience. I opened the laptop again. The second video was taken during a dinner at her parents' place. I remember that night. I spilled wine on my shirt and made a stupid joke to her dad. Everyone laughed, including her. But the video? It was just her, zooming in on me. Watching. Silent. Her voice, off camera again, said something like, "He really thinks they like him." That's when it started clicking. These weren't love videos. These weren't saved memories. These were files. Records. Observations. Like she was collecting me. Like I was the subject of some long, cruel experiment. The third video made me nauseous. She was alone in the frame, lying in our bed, staring up at the ceiling. She whispered, "I think I could scream right now and he'd still be downstairs watching those dumb DIY videos." She was right. That night I was learning how to fix a door hinge. Because she told me it squeaked. I didn't open the rest. I couldn't. My throat felt tight. My skin felt dirty. I closed the laptop and just sat there on that motel bed, listening to the hum of the vending machine outside the window and wondering how long she had been performing. And for who? Because here's the thing. Those videos weren't meant for her. I could tell. She was talking to someone. But not me. I stayed up all night replaying every conversation, every weird moment, every excuse. All of it. And I kept coming back to one question I couldn't shake. What kind of person pretends for years just to watch someone not know? And that's when I remembered something else. A name I'd seen once. Just once. On a hotel receipt. I thought it was nothing at the time. But now I had to find out who he was. Because I was starting to think Darla wasn't just cheating. I was starting to think she was documenting it. And not for fun. It wasn't even a full name. Just an initial and a last name scribbled under guest number 2 on the old hotel receipt I'd taken a photo of weeks ago. At the time, I figured it was just a front desk error. Now I knew better. D. Hallbrook. I Googled it like a man possessed. Dozens of LinkedIn profiles. A few Instagram accounts. Most dead ends. But then one popped up in a corporate newsletter from a tech firm downtown. IT security specialist. Tall, buzz cut, friendly smile. The same guy I saw in the parking lot of the speakeasy, opening the car door like he'd been doing it for years. But here's what made my stomach turn. He wasn't just a tech guy. He specialized in surveillance systems. I stared at the screen for way too long, letting that detail sink in. I thought about the videos. About how clean they were. About the weird moments over the past year when I'd feel like something was off in the house, but couldn't explain it. Like the Alexa suddenly turning on. Like the TV switching to HDMI 2 for no reason. What if I wasn't just being watched in the background? What if I was being studied? I opened the settings on the router in our house using my phone. I'd always had admin access. Darla never cared about that stuff. There were 2 unfamiliar devices listed. One had a name I didn't recognize. The other was listed simply as Nest Cam LR. Living room. I don't own a Nest Cam. I hadn't cried through any of this. Not when she left. Not at the bar. Not when I watched myself on those creepy videos. But right then, staring at the word Nest Cam, I broke. Because I realized something I hadn't let myself admit. I was living in someone else's experiment. And Darla was never the subject. I was. By the time I got back to the house, the sun was coming up. That cold, pale kind of morning light that makes everything feel fake, like you're stuck in a dream someone else is having. I parked a block away. No sign of her car. Good. I let myself in through the side door. Quiet. Careful. Not because I was scared of being caught, but because suddenly, I didn't know who this house belonged to anymore. It looked the same, but it felt hostile. Observed. The first thing I did was unplug the router. Then I went looking. Behind the bookshelf in the hallway, there was a tiny black lens tucked between the spines of some old travel guides. It wasn't even hidden well. It was just small enough that you'd miss it unless you were looking. I found another one in the corner of the laundry room, angled perfectly toward the back hallway. And one more. This one made me freeze, in the bedroom, right above the headboard. All of them were wireless. Clean. Quiet. Expensive. I didn't touch them. I didn't want to leave fingerprints or trigger something. But the realization hit me harder than anything else so far. This wasn't just Darla being unfaithful. This was intentional, planned, structured, like a project. And the one thing I couldn't figure out was why. I went back to the laptop and started checking her cloud storage. Most of it was locked behind two-factor authentication, but one folder, buried inside an old shared drive, was wide open. There were audio files. Dozens. Most were named with dates and numbers. Random at first glance. I picked one. Listened. Nothing but static. But about 20 seconds in, a voice cut through. Not hers. A man's voice. Calm. Almost rehearsed. Subject unaware. Emotional baseline stable. No signs of suspicion. Recommend continued exposure to minor stress triggers. I sat back in the chair, trying to breathe. Subject. They were talking about me. There were more files. Each one recorded days apart. And in each one, the same voice spoke like a scientist logging lab notes. Observing my habits, my moods, my reactions. There were even timestamps of conversations I barely remembered having. Arguments, jokes, silent dinners, and they'd been analyzed. By someone. Maybe more than one person. And that's when I saw it. A subfolder labeled Final Phase. It was empty. For now. That was enough to send me into full panic. Because if there was a final phase, that meant this wasn't just about cheating. This wasn't some sick love triangle or emotional game. It was a timeline. A sequence. With an end. And I had no idea what I was being led toward. I knew I couldn't go to the police. What was I going to tell them? That my wife was watching me in my own house, storing files in the cloud, and working with a guy from a tech firm who might be running some kind of psychological experiment on me. They'd think I was having a breakdown. And maybe I was. But that didn't mean I was wrong. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I just sat in the living room with every light on, staring at those little blinking cameras that I still hadn't unplugged. It felt like if I moved too quickly, something would trigger. Like I was part of a test, and the next wrong step would launch a trapdoor beneath me. At some point, I picked up my phone and dialed her sister, Mallory. Now let me explain something. Mallory and I haven't spoken in months. Maybe a year. We never really got along. She always thought I was too sensitive, too soft-spoken to be trusted, as she once drunkenly told Darla at a New Year's party. But that's exactly why I called her. Because if anyone knew how dark Darla could go, it was Mallory. She didn't pick up the first time. Or the second. But on the third try, her groggy voice finally came through the line. I didn't even say hi. I just said, "Mallory, do you know someone named Holbrook?" There was a pause. Longer than it should have been. Then she said, "What did she tell you?" Not who. Not what are you talking about. Just what did she tell you? That's when I knew I wasn't crazy. I told her everything. About the cameras, the videos, the files, the audio logs, the phrase final phase, all of it. I expected her to hang up, or scream, or call me insane. Instead, her voice dropped low and cold. "Elmer, you need to leave that house. Right now. Don't pack anything. Don't try to outsmart her. Just go. You were never supposed to find that stuff." I froze. What do you mean, supposed to? There was another long pause. I could hear her moving, like she was getting dressed or pacing. Then she said something that didn't make sense at first. She told me she was working on something big, with a guy who knew how to monetize emotions. I thought it was another startup pitch. You know how she is. But she said you were perfect for it because you trust too much and talk just enough. I didn't ask more. I couldn't breathe. Mallory, what is this? Is this legal? She didn't answer that. All she said was, Darla thinks she's building something revolutionary. But if she's in final phase, it means she's about to disappear. And when she does, she won't take you with her. Then the line went dead. Mallory's warning wouldn't stop echoing in my head. She won't take you with her. It sounded like a threat disguised as a fact. I kept replaying her tone over and over, trying to decide if she was afraid for me, or just afraid in general. I grabbed my keys and walked toward the front door. No bag, no plan. I told myself I'd go to a hotel, or a friend's place, or just sleep in my car. Anything to put space between me and the walls that had been watching me. But when I opened the door, something strange happened. The alarm went off. That might not sound shocking at first, but we don't have an alarm system. At least, not one I ever set up. A cold, mechanical voice spoke from somewhere in the ceiling. Exit protocol invalid. Please enter authorization code. I froze. Looked around. The hallway lights had changed color, slightly warmer, almost orange. I hadn't noticed them do that before. And the worst part? The door wouldn't open now. I tried again. The handle wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. It was disabled. I backed away from the door and tried the kitchen exit. Same result. Same voice. My heart was pounding now. I felt like I was trapped in a smart home I didn't even know I lived in. And then, just as I turned toward the garage, I heard it. A faint chime from the hallway speaker, followed by her voice. Don't do that, Elmer. We're almost there. It wasn't live. It was pre-recorded, timed, scripted, like she knew I'd try to run once I found out. That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't just part of an experiment anymore. I was a subject under lock and key. I ran back to the living room and unplugged everything. TV, router, even the standing lamp for no reason. I smashed the Alexa with a fireplace poker and ripped the Nest Cam from the hallway wall. It sparked a little. I didn't care. I kept swinging until there was nothing left to swing at. Then silence. No alarm. No voice. Just the heavy, still quiet of a house that had never actually been mine. I sat down, shaking, sweating, staring at the front door like it might open on its own. It didn't. But a small envelope had been slipped through the mail slot while I was destroying everything. I hadn't even heard it drop. I picked it up. Inside was a single photo. It was me, sleeping, from behind. No timestamp. No note. Just proof that someone had been in the house, behind me, close enough to reach out, and chose not to. I held the photo in my hands for a long time. Me asleep. My back to the lens. Completely unaware. There was no anger left in me at that point. Just this weird, hollow calm. Like the kind you feel right before a storm passes and you realize the house is still standing. I finally understood what they were trying to do. It wasn't just about betrayal or surveillance or some twisted tech experiment. It was about control. They wanted to push me into the darkest corner of myself. Isolate me. Break me down. Make me question who I was, until I became something else. Something broken enough to film. And I almost let them. But not anymore. That night, I did the only thing I could think of. I stopped reacting. I turned the power back on. Reset the breaker. Made myself a cup of tea. Sat on the couch. And waited. Hours passed. I didn't move. Didn't panic. I just waited. Eventually, I heard footsteps on the porch. Then a key in the lock. She didn't expect me to be awake. She walked in like nothing had happened. Coat over her arm. Smile rehearsed. But the second she saw the broken camera on the floor, the shattered Alexa, and me, calm, still, alive in the silence, her face dropped. Not in guilt. In disappointment. Elmer, she said, like I was a student who'd failed a pop quiz. I know, I replied. Just that. 2 words. She stood there frozen for a few seconds, like she didn't know what script came next. Then she turned around and left. No excuses. No apology. No speech. Just the sound of the door closing one last time. And that was it. A week later, the house was mine again. I replaced every piece of tech. Changed every lock. Called a lawyer. Cleaned out the cloud accounts and filed for a restraining order. Turns out Mallory was more helpful than I expected. She testified. Apparently Darla had tested this concept before, shorter stints, other people. But I'd been the long-term subject. I guess that's a compliment. It took months to feel human again. But I did. I moved. Got a new job. A smaller apartment with no smart devices. No cameras. Just a cat I adopted named Patch. who stares at the wall like he knows too much. He probably